Hi everyone, we are starting weeks 33 and 34. You are in Math 7, and we are going to be looking at volume of prisms. And there are, to review prisms real fast, remember prisms are when you have the same bases. So this is a funny looking prism. It's the same bases connected up by rectangles. So that is an example of a prism. But we're mostly going to be looking at triangular prisms and rectangular prisms. And so those are some examples. And here are some other examples. And remember that there's a triangular prism and they're connected up by rectangles. Today our main focus is going to be on rectangular prisms. And we're going to be looking at volume. So remember, volume is how much something carries. So for example, if we were to look at my coffee cup, we would want to know how much liquid does this contain. That's what volume talks about. So volume, rectangular prisms, are a little bit tricky because anything can be a base. Oops, sorry about that. Anything can be a base on a rectangular prism. So no matter how I lay this down, that can be a base. So if I lay it like this, it's a base. If I lay it like that, that's a base. So it's not really going to matter when we start looking at this carefully. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Wow, it's really orange for some reason. Let's see if that helps. All right, so right here, volume. Again, prism, two bases. Those bases are congruent and they're connected by rectangles. And what we want to think about, another way we can think about this, I went into Legos to help us. If this right here was our base, okay, this way. When we think about what a prism is, it's when we start stacking them one on top of the other. So this would be one base, and then that would be a second layer. Almost like putting together a cake or putting together a layer of Legos. So that would be a rectangular prism. This would also be a rectangular prism. And so it's the same base stacked right on top of each other. So this one would be 1, 2, 3, 4 bases long. This one right here would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bases tall. And this one right here would only be 2 bases tall. So these would all be examples of volume of rectangular prisms. And we're going to use these to help us understand how to find volume. So if we remember that a prism has 2 bases, they're congruent, they're connected by rectangles, and it's the same base. And when we talk about base, we're going to use capital B every single time that we talk about it. So it's the same base stacked on top of itself over and over. Now make sure you're taking notes because that's how we learn. So a lot of you, I think, are just watching this and not taking notes. You need to take notes. You need to try to do the problems as well. Okay. Let's get rid of some of this extra stuff. Okay. So volume. So if I was to give you just this one right here, and I wanted to know just the volume of this, and I just gave you this, so this would be one Lego. That's the volume of one Lego. But how many Legos would that be? You would tell me it's how many Legos? 2. So the volume of this would be 2 Legos because there's 2 of them here. So if this was one base, then you had 2, so the volume would be 2. So if you think of it this way, if I start off with this one Lego, you would tell me that the volume of this would be 1, Lego that has 2 knobs. If I stacked it together like this, you would tell me the volume is what? 1, 2, 3, 4 Legos with 2 knobs. All you did was you multiplied by the stack. There's 4 of them here. That's how we think about volume. It's the base times how tall it is. So how many knobs, if you want to think about how many knobs there was 2 knobs, so 1, 2, times how tall it is. How tall? 4. So when I separate it out, you had 8 knobs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 knobs. So that's how we think of volume. So let's look at this one. There's 4 knobs. So the volume of this would be 4 if I just gave you 1. Now I give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it was 4, but now it's 7 tall. So the volume of this is the base, which is 4 times the length, or the height, excuse me, which is 7. So 4, the base, times 7 is 28. So if I was to take this apart and I look at each thing, you can see that the volume is 28 knobs. So that's how we're going to do our volume and how we're going to think about it. We're going to think about it as the base area times the height. So it's a really nice way, rather than length times width times height, which is what you were taught already. It's a much faster, not faster, but a much more concise way to think of it as the base area times the height. So we need to remember that B is going to equal the base area and H is going to equal the height of the prism. Okay, and remember the height of the prism is what connects the 2 bases. So this gets back to, and the reason we do that is now if I gave you this right here, if I told you this base area and this height, you can tell me the volume of this. All right, so let's look at example number 1. Find the volume of a rectangular prism with a length of 2 meters, a width of 6 meters, and a height of 3 meters. So we're looking at something that looks more like this now, where you have a length of 2 meters, a height of 3 meters, and 6 meters. So what I do is I break it down immediately into my base and my height right here. So you can see that it says height of 3 meters. So it's going to be the other parts that are going to make up my base. So the base is a 2 by 6. So it, oops, sorry about that. Everything seems to have a mind of its own this morning. There we go. So the base is a rectangle, so length times width, or base times height, depending on how you look at it. 2 times 6, which is 12. The reason that's important for us is, hopefully you've already written this down, base area times height, so B is 12. Just come back and fill that in because we know it. Okay, so the picture, I wanted to illustrate the picture in this one. It's the only time I'm actually probably going to draw it out this way. So we knew that the base that this thing was 3 meters tall. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then we knew it was 6 by 2. So what we found here, this 6 by 2, was this 12. And because we know that the height is 3, each layer, almost like thinking about a layer of the cake, but what we're really doing is this. We know this one's 12, we know this one's 12, and we know this one's 12. That's what we just did. So we know that's 12, we know this is 12, and we know this is 12. So that's what we're doing. But in the formula, because we don't want to have to do this every single time, we know that the height was 3. So now we just put it into our formula. So we put it into this formula. So volume equals base times height. So 12 times 3. Volume equals 36, and it was in meters. So volume is in cubic meters. And the reason why is right here we did meters times meters. So this is meters squared. So we had meters squared times meters, which is m squared times m, which is m cubed. That's kind of it's called unit analysis. That's why. So the volume is 36 meters cubed. So volume is, for rectangular prisms in particular, is very, very straightforward. You just have to pick out what you want to be your base, and then you find your base area, and then you multiply it by its height. So here's another one for us to try. I want you to go ahead and try it on your own and then come back. The volume of a rectangular prism with a length of 12.4 meters and a depth of 16 meters and a height of 10 meters. I want you to figure out what you think depth means. You might actually see that in the real world. They tend to use length, depth, and height when they talk about rectangular prisms. And so I want you to try to figure that out and then come on back and see how you did. All right, now that you're back, what did you think depth meant? Well, if we have length and height, depth probably means width. And you're right. So we're going to do over here, volume equals base times height. My variables, I'm going to identify so that I can fill that in later. Okay. So height was 10. I'm going to go fill that in. Then I don't have to worry about it anymore. So then I had 12.4 and 16. So the base area, you could do base times height. Length times width, base times height, same thing. Oops. $12.4 times 16, 198.4. Okay, so now I have my two things. So 198.4 times 10. My volume is 1,984 meters cubed. So the volume is 1,984 meters cubed. So how did you do? Did you make a mistake? If you made a mistake, remember, the point is, if you made a mistake, go back and figure out what you did wrong. Did you pick out the wrong things for the base? Maybe, maybe not. If you had done 12.4 and 10, you're actually going to end up with the same answer so long as you use 16, because it is multiplication and you can do it in any order that you want. You just need to be careful that you use all three of those and multiply them together for rectangular prisms. Rectangular prisms are very, very, very forgiving. All right, so go ahead, try your homework, and then I will see you on our next video. Bye.